Hello, good evening, and welcome to Sunday Night Breakdown. A loud firework has just gone off outside.
Yeah,
It
I've got
is.
some as well. Yeah,
We're
yeah.
here on Bonfire Night on an actual Sunday to do Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Ratledge, Dave Forrester with you to look back over all of the action this week, and this was exactly the week where we decided that we were going to give a cursory glance to Europe
And
because there
European
was so,
games. Yeah,
so many games. Flyers lost by 1 to Juventus. Eagles won by 6 against is it Brno? I don't know how that's pronounced.
Bruno, I
Brno.
think. Yeah.
Um, Caledonia lost by a lot, 106-58 in Bilbao, and Towers. Gone back 20 years. Lions were beaten by Hapoel Tel Aviv in a, was it behind closed doors or not game that was supposed to be in Tel Aviv but was in London, 90-98. Anything you want to just pick up on
Yeah,
any of them?
just all the games I thought went kind of the way I thought they kind of should.
Mm.
Um, Insofar as in real time, it was Newcastle and Bristol were the first two games.
Mm.
Um, and the Czech team were okay, but we've always thought that we could be as good as the Czech league, and Newcastle probably should have won the game by more. The defense, wasn't that great in the second half, and they let them hang around. And a shout out for Darius as well, because obviously 19 years is playing his first game in Europe.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a thing for him, and I know that was a big moment. It actually he went into the starting lineup, and actually made quite a substantial difference. In relation to Bristol, that again, that's another game against a Lithuanian team whereby we've lost by a point.
Yeah.
So Newcastle did it, and now Bristol have done it, and and that's not even Bristol's full group.
No. They were unlucky as well, I thought.
They were unlucky, albeit I thought the rest got it right at the end. I thought that Samuel's steal was a steal, and then I thought that the tie-up was a tie-up. Everybody thinks there must be a foul there, but I didn't. I watched it 3 times back. I didn't see a foul. I just saw the hands on the ball. That's a proper Lithuanian team there. I think they're actually a bit better than Saudi at the moment. They've won a few more games. So running them close again gives us a fair barometer as to where we are as a league. In relation to Caledonia, a normal BBL team can play with an ACB team for 20 minutes until they basically warm them up, if I can put it that way.
Up,
yeah. Because that's the reality, but that's the difference. And Caledonia's second in the third quarter in particular, they kind of fell apart, and the bench in particular. Really just couldn't handle the extra pressure. They couldn't get into good stuff. But again, that's an ACB team. It's the second or third most finance league in the world. And Caledonia are not meant to be competing with them. So that was kind of where I thought it was. It was a little bit like, I think, when Leicester a few years back went across to Italy.
Yeah.
They played Sassari, somebody, and they
played Dinamo Sassari, and they were without like 4 Americans or something, and through 3 quarters they were in touch, and then got beat by 30.
Yeah, exactly. So you just think you're basically waking these teams up, and that's where we are. That's a difference in finance in the league. And in relation to London, that was the only game I didn't actually watch because it was BT Sport, and I was watching Newcastle beat Man U, and
Manchester Cheshire, hopefully,
and Manchester Cheshire as well, of course, because Thursday night. That's right. That's was actually I was watching Manchester Cheshire. I wasn't actually watching Newcastle beat Man U because it was Wednesday night. And yeah, I mean, I didn't see much of that game, but it was the play behind closed doors. Hapoel, I think, have won every game this season.
Yeah, it wasn't actually behind closed doors.
Yeah,
but it's almost like you could get a ticket 10 minutes before the game or something. I couldn't quite work it out.
Yeah,
but yeah, and as you say, Hapoel was a very good team, and obviously the confusion on everything because the game was supposed to be on Wednesday in Tel Aviv, and then it was behind closed doors. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, but it is a disappointing loss for them insofar as it matters in given what's going on in Israel.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of, I think it's just a question of getting the game played. But they won't be satisfied with having dropped 2 straight in that competition.
No.
Particularly
because it matters really for if they're aiming for the top 2 to get a bye through to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, and also just the level that they're going to have to reach. At some point you've got to beat the better teams, haven't you?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So let's go to the British Basketball League game starting on Thursday night. Manchester Giants 88, Cheshire Phoenix 116. Legend Robertson was listed but didn't play. There's no Lee. Rye was back, but very rusty looking in the few minutes that he got. Skylar White hitting threes. Rideau and Jack were ones. It's 14-2 inside 4 minutes.
Well, this was a bizarro game.
Yes.
I thought the whole thing about this was everything was bizarre. From the moment that your producer takes one of the most successful coaches in history and sticks him in the to talk about, give us 3 lines of assessment every 20 minutes instead of sitting next to you to tell us what's going on in the game, all the way through to the beginning of the game, whereby Manchester come out incredibly flat, to the rest, not only do they come out incredibly flat, but nothing is done to unflatten them. If I can put it that way.
Yeah.
The game just kind of flows. They play, the whole story was Manchester, and it's not to underplay Cheshire's offense or Cheshire, the way Cheshire played, but we're quite comfortable with what Cheshire are at the moment. They're particularly without Rye. They changed a little bit with Rye, but without Rye, they're quite well formed insofar as they know where the shots are coming from, and they're just hunting those shots. So whether it's Rideau on the they've got little combinations with their players, with Rideau and White in particular, but then Chargewa as well, and then you've got Jack and Christian hanging around the corners, and Ulf coming in to give you the dirty work. So we kind of know what they are. Manchester, we really didn't, and this was just a semi-bizarre situation. They gave up 66 points in the first half. They didn't call a timeout.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about the environment there much because it's difficult, isn't it? Because they're new. It's a new coach, it's a new assistant coach, and you're waiting to see what you see.
Paul's been there.
Has he been there?
Yeah.
Okay. When it's a new coaching unit, and I think was there an announcement at some point that Callum was going to be an assistant coach? Vaguely,
I don't remember that. That might be true. I don't remember.
I can't remember. But in any event, coaching this game, basically didn't coach it, or didn't coach it to any degree. And I appreciate, most of the timeouts he's not taking them, and we've seen that all season. And that's a matter for them as to how they do their internal management. Because there's times that Fab didn't take timeouts unless he really wanted to cuss someone out. He'd leave it to me or leave it to Ian. He'd be quite happy to do that. He was a player coach, obviously, but you don't always have to have the one voice. Players need to hear different voices all the time to kind of freshen the message. But what got me in this game was there's just no timeouts. You can't give up 66 points in a half at home, and not call one single timeout, and not noticeably.
Yeah, I mean, there was a thing a couple of years ago where Rob didn't call a timeout for a month or something, but they were winning every game quite comfortably.
They were winning every game. And you had a veteran team. Yeah. So that's the way. When you've got a veteran team, your timeouts are your subs. Yeah. You just sub a couple of guys in for a couple of guys, and then you just to right the ship because you've got confidence in them. You're not having to do it. So that was just bizarre, and the whole dynamic there was crazy. I was trying to think back. Have I ever seen anything like that before? Because generally, when teams like we've all been around, you've been around BBL a long time. So have I, British basketball a long time. So have I. And when things are going wrong, the coaches generally go down their own way. And you'll be throwing something, or you'll be shouting at something. You were part of the Billy Mims legendary 1-49. It wasn't. And Billy was calling some timeouts. Billy was, and you're blaming people in the press, and you're doing this, and you're doing that. You're doing anything you can.
Everybody really did.
Every trick to try and not necessarily to divert attention from yourself, but to try and get something out of the players. You pull everything out, and yet this was like a silent protest from Brian Simonian. And I don't know what was going on. I'm still not sure what was going on. It just reeked of internal dissension, and you know, and Cheshire was the wrong team because Cheshire were, you know, Cheshire have got this chip about the Northwest rivalry. I have to say, sorry, that was the other thing that was bizarre. That horrendous Mancunian kind of voiceover that they did at the beginning. I mean, I'm sorry, like, you know, this is not 1990s and it's not Bez from the Happy Mondays or whoever, you know. And plus, on the top of that, Cheshire's not Mancunian. Cheshire's in Cheshire.
Yeah, but the game was in Manchester. The game was in Manchester.
Say again?
The game was in Manchester.
It was in Manchester, but Chester reminds me of Port. You could might as well put the Scouser on, you know, Kevin. You know, the two Scousers from Harry Enfield, you know. I mean, dear me, how I thought we were better than that. Anyway, so that happened. I've forgotten about that, but I remembered it now. And then from basketball perspective, everything was kind of subsumed by that. And then it got even weirder in the third quarter, when Manchester eventually made a defensive play, but the table gave them 2 points anyway.
Yeah.
I mean,
so for anybody who didn't see that or doesn't
before.
for some reason doesn't follow Dave on Twitter, I don't know why you wouldn't. There was a breakaway attempted dunk by Maceo Jack, I think it was, and Austin Lawton blocked the shot, and the thing I don't understand, and I have
inbounds through the head,
through the head, and something goes on, but the points were given for Maceo Jack, and the block is not on live stats. But you obviously pointed that out to me, and I thought, well, but that doesn't make any sense because it doesn't matter what's on live stats; it's what's in the scorebook. The points, but I'm led to believe, and I've done some investigation today, that the scorekeeper and the scoreboard operator both gave the points as well. So therefore, and the rules of basketball have always been thus that anything that's in the book at the point at which the referee sign it is so that's the thing.
Maceo's going to put a little star next to his stats at the end of the season
and I recall, so I got asked on Twitter by my former point guard about if it had ever happened before, and I recalled, as I always do, skew old, a game in the 90s for Worthing where their last shot was put on the scorebook. It was a 3-point shot, and for some reason they put 6 points on the total. But of course the referees didn't notice it.
Was there a golden buzzer?
Well, not quite. It was way before Barry Hearn as well. So
the golden buzzer.
Yeah. So
Google it. If he doesn't know, just Google golden buzzer. Some nice pictures.
And put Dave on, and you'll see a good picture. But so basically, the rules of basketball are whatever's in the book, the referees have to make sure it's right at the end. So basically, the scorekeeper will take the book to the changing rooms, and the referees will check that everything was right, and then they'll sign the book and blah blah blah. But obviously, everybody, that's the bizarre thing to me, that one person can make a mistake. The stats people can put something on wrong, but the fact that they all did the same wrong thing, and as you say, Manchester didn't even notice it. I didn't notice it.
Well, the fact that the only person who noticed it was a vaguely interested podcaster, who was 200 miles away, is slightly unusual. But it actually says more about the whole dysfunction with Manchester than anything else, because it helps being slightly on the spectrum.
Because whilst you say a vaguely interested podcaster, you also spent 10 years looking for stuff like that.
Exactly, that's the whole point. I was vaguely, as I say, it helps being vaguely on the spectrum, right? But I knew that it was a 20 point. The first thing that you do as a coach, or being sat on the bench, right, is time and score all the time. In theory, you should know fouls as well, right? Those three things you absolutely know. And I picked it up, not because I saw the points go on, but because when Evan Walsh made that shot at the other end, right, I knew they'd been down 20 at half time because that had registered in my brain. Evan Walsh makes the shot at the far end. And I look at the scoreboard and they're still down 18 or something like that. I'm thinking, that's not right, because they've only made one shot and they've been up and down. They've scored a couple of times and momentum's going in Manchester's way. So at that point, I rewind it. Now, somebody on the Manchester bench has to see that.
Well, my thing is, there's normally, as you say, somebody on the bench, assistant coach or whoever, who's taking sort of notes.
I don't get anything. It's just indicative of the fact that they've got 12 people on the bench, and nobody has thought that doesn't look right. We were down 20. It's almost like the game in their own mind that the whole, this is what I'm talking about, but being bizarre and weird dysfunction. Almost like the whole game was, everybody was in their own little world, and nobody was focused on what they need to be focused on. And in the basketball, in the BBL, there's nothing more you need to be focused on than the scoreboard at all times. You know, particularly when you've got a bit of momentum. So yeah. So that was fairly bizarre as well. And I understand, I understand that, because I think the net rippled a little bit when Lawton blocked it. The scorekeepers thought the ball had gone through the hoop because it was a dunk. They wouldn't check with the refs to see that the signal had been made, because the ball was put in from kind of the ball was recovered near the corner. They must have assumed that it was put in from under the basket. Kind of a lot of things. But then again, you've got the MC shouting, "What a block by Lawton!" You know, it just makes, it's not good. It's not good on anybody's perspective. It kind of it reeks of a bit of amateurism, to be honest. Not just the table, because I appreciate mistakes can be made, but just the whole setup, and obviously Cheshire aren't going to be waving their arms and saying, "Oh, you just gave us 2 points." Why would they? So back to the game. After that, Manchester made a little bit of a run.
As you say, that was about the only stop that Manchester got in the game. It wasn't far off it. And
Manchester made a little run, actually, to be honest. Those 2 points. So at one point they got down to 7 on the scoreboard, which was 5 in real life. And you thought, oh well, maybe there's a little run here, but they couldn't get a stop. They had no defensive discipline. They weren't, I didn't think, playing for each other the way they had played for each other in earlier games, not defensively anyway. They had limited interest, as you say. The amount of times that Skylar White got a pick and pop because they didn't switch or they didn't communicate. And it's the most basic play in the world to deal with if you're locked in. They just didn't seem locked in at all. And Cheshire then basically kept scoring, and that was the game.
Yeah, and Rye come on in the first half and look way off it, understandably so. Got a few more minutes at the end because the game was so far, and a few points, and obviously there was a few words exchanged.
Oh yeah, then we had the saga at the end as well, which just topped off the evening, didn't it?
Two timeouts called by Cheshire in the last 12 seconds.
Yeah, just topped it off. I mean, I'm kind of a little bit on the fence about this because at the end of the day, what matters is winning the game. And I'm always been as somebody who wasn't kind of brought up within the culture of the game or the culture of the sport in either America or in Britain from a playing perspective. I've always been a little bit shaky on where the moral high ground lies and where the lines are. And you have that as well with the European stuff as well, because it's different in different places.
Yeah.
What I would say is, I know that the environment I was brought up in, from basketball wise in this country, we would not have done that. Now, I appreciate there was best of 3 then instead of best of 4, so there was a risk of points difference. But this wasn't a points difference thing. The reason it wasn't a points difference thing was because they were trying to get the ball to the 16-year-old kid. If it's a points difference thing, then you're trying to get the ball to Aaron Wright to score, right? So whilst I can kind of get away with the 11-second timeout, I can't get away with a 3-second timeout. I just think that, I say I can't get away with it. What it means is I don't criticize Coach Simonian for saying what he said, which was that's bullshit. He said, you wouldn't say that. And whether he wants to shake hands or not, the whole shaking hands thing, I always think is so ceremonial. It's a waste of everybody's time. It doesn't mean anything, So it doesn't mean anything whether you shake hands or whether you don't. And we had this before, people getting upset about it in a 2-legged game where you didn't shake hands after the first leg. It's just a ceremonial. I mean, you could make a video footage of kind of handshakes that coaches do at the end of games. When you're walking past, your hand out there, look the other way, keep going. Do it because you have to. And if you're doing something because you have to do something, well, how really important is it? You know what I mean? So I don't have any issue with I don't really have any issue with Ben Thomas calling the second time out. I wouldn't have done it. I think the reality is it can stop. I think there's a little bit of Cheshire have got that little bit of kind of little engine that could, nobody believes in us type of thing going. Whereby we're going to stick it to the bigger teams. We're quite good. No one's giving us any credit. chip on the shoulder, that type of thing. Manchester's the big brother, the big city. We're coming here and we're beating them. And I think they quite like the idea of kind of sticking it to them. That's fine, but that's dangerous because, you know, eventually that worm turns. So you're very careful how you do that. A couple of times it was better.
I mean, we've all seen it in the past where the game is turned the next time they meet and they do the same thing back to you. And I remember one coach who I won't mention basically called a timeout and stood there and stared at the other bench for the minute and didn't even go in just to make a point.
Yeah, why not? You know, that's ultimately, you know, certainly the motto I was always told my head coach was, you know, Dave, you don't start it, but if you got to finish it,
yeah.
You know, you don't start it, and you know, I think there's a lot of common sense in that.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I'm a bit like you. The first one I wasn't too bothered about. The second one I was like, that's a bit much now.
Yeah. So yeah, and then I say, you know, it is what it is. You know, I don't. So I say, you know, it's within the rules of the game. A call timeout. It's very appropriate for the coach. To turn around and say that's what he thinks of it.
The competition is structured to encourage you to do that because you need to win by one more point.
Yeah, except that they're trying to run it for a player for a kid never played before.
Yeah, but my
view on that is, you know, no, if you want to get that kid a shot, you should have worked on it in practice. You don't need. There's a story about that because probably the first year that I was on the bench, it was in the middle of the 2009-2010 season when I started. It's actually one of the winning streaks you put up earlier. There's a 23-game winning streak in that season, from January on to about April, and we were really good.
Just to be clear, I've never won 28 games in the British Basketball League. It's not my winning streak. I just tweeted out.
Newcastle. Yeah, you tweeted. This is a 23-game one
23,
because it was it was after Christmas, after we got beat at Worthing and Fab threw a clipboard on the court, and then we just went off. We signed Drew Sullivan about a month later and just went and destroyed everybody for about 3 months until we fell apart. But the quarterfinal of that was a season when they were still doing one-legged quarterfinals, right? And we played against. We were indirectly
in the playoffs.
In the playoffs, yeah. I think we were indirectly responsible for Worthing actually not removing themselves from the league the next year because they got the joy of playing the Eagles. They finished 8th. They got the joy of playing us in the Telewest Arena on the back of a 20-odd game winning streak in the first game of the playoffs. Well, you know, good luck. And of course, they don't get any home. That's a £2,000 trip for them.
Yeah.
No revenue out of it, you know, really. And I think at that point,
plus
they thought
an extra salary.
Yeah, extra salary stuff. So it just made no sense. And we beat them by about 40. And their coach at the time was Dave Titmus, who was a legendary British basketball coach. You know, and about 3 minutes to go in that game, I called a timeout. And I think if I wanted some subs in, I think we just couldn't get subs in or something like that. Can't remember why. And Dave Titmus pulled us afterwards, you know, in quite a abrupt way for somebody who didn't really know what was going on. So look, you don't do that. You can't, you know, that is, you know, the game's over. You know, whatever it is. You know, game's over. Let the game play. You're embarrassing us, disrespecting us, whatever. You don't call timeouts when you're up 40 with 3 minutes to go. No, I just took it on board. Obviously, that was it. Who you think's best, Dave? And I'm like, okay, no, I'll take it on board.
Well, in the old days, you used to be able to call a timeout to get subs in and go, I don't really want it, carry on playing.
Yeah, but we couldn't do that at this point.
You've got to take them in.
No, I actually sent him, because I was still very respectful of people at that point, I actually sent him an email back the following day. I said, yeah, look, hear what you say. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to, you know, in any way disrespect you guys. And I don't think you responded to that. I can't remember. Whatever. Oh, maybe you might. I'll check my Hotmail after this. Maybe he did. But so there is a code about it, which is not immediately apparent. And as I say, it just means there'll be more fun watching them next time they play.
Yeah. So Lawton with 16 points and 2 blocks on the stat sheet. Anderson with 15 points and Harris 14. Chargois 9 of 12 for 24 points. Jack 8 for 11 for 22 points. 6 players in double figures. Rideau 10 points, 6 rebounds, 12 assists, 7 steals. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, look, we got to start giving Rideau some credit, not because of his offense, but because of his presence. He seems to be a guy who shows up every game, and both ends. and the steals that he gets aren't, they're smart steals. They're not cheating, gambling steals. He gets his hands on basketballs where he's making smart plays. So I think his kind of IQ is becoming more apparent by the day. The rest of those guys are doing what they do and they're having fun doing it, which is fine. They just got to keep riding the energy, I think.
59% field goals and 48% from three they shot. So let's go
Manchester's 3-point defense.
It was terrible. Let's go to Friday. Plymouth City Patriots 72, Caledonia Gladiators 82. Obviously a hectic travel week for Caledonia. Green and Levi into the starting lineup. I couldn't quite work out why they kept running up and down in this game and spoiling the free throw shooting contest that was going on.
Yeah, this was. I tweeted this morning about this game. I caught up with it. I said there was some interesting refereeing in this game. I have to say, that's actually still my major memory of it. Other than the fact that Caledonia's bench, again struggled, and kind of allowed Plymouth to come back from a very, very slow.
So 6 minutes in, they're 15-7 down Plymouth. Wiley, this first time he's come off the bench, by the way, this season. Massive impact, great response for him doing that. Scored 5 in a row. Dusha had 5 as well, and a 3-point. I haven't talked about his 3-point shooting last week, and they came from 10 down to 23-25.
Now, what I didn't get in this game, and again, I'm going to talk a little bit about the officiating because I think there was some weird stuff went on. First thing was they had a crew, which I'm pretty sure had never ever worked together, because you had Josh Bull up from the north, together with the 2 refs from Plymouth, Ian, I think it was Ian Spearman, and one of the lady who I don't know.
Alex Belkner, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember those guys, and Josh, of course, had ref the Eagles game on Tuesday night, and had unfortunately been subject to a bit of verbal abuse from the crowd.
I heard that. I did hear. Unfortunately for the person in the crowd, the commentators then named him on the commentary.
Well, I didn't watch it back for obvious reasons. No, I don't need the notoriety. But Josh is actually, I like Josh. He's good. He's a solid. He's got a good deportment. He handles himself with kind of a good, just the way that he talks. He's very level-headed. The way he talks to people, you don't see him going kind of going mad, or you don't see him doing strange things. But he has these meltdowns. He had one last year where he called the ball out of bounds at Newcastle against London, where it bounced 3 feet inbounds, literally in front of his eyes. He had one on Tuesday night where he called a flop and a layup good on the subsequent pass off the layup. And there was an incredible unsportsmanlike foul call in this game. I don't know if you remember it. Coming down, I think it was in the second quarter, and it was coming down towards the right-hand side as the camera looked, and right in front of Gareth Murray in the bench, and everybody just looked around. It was like he was the trail ref, and there was the 2 refs who only ref together who called nothing at all. It was kind of a bit of a wave of the arm, and then, which was just utterly bizarre on watching it back. And then subsequently, you and Lloyd were doing this game, weren't you?
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, and that, which was interesting because Lloyd actually went on to say a couple of things that I was thinking aloud as he was saying them. I don't know whether says more about him or more about me.
I'd be worried if I was Lloyd.
Yeah, exactly. But one was, I'm sorry, I don't know. Alexandra, the lady ref, I don't know anything. I can't remember. She called on sports night foul on Joe Hart, which has been basically going on all season, and no one's called it. And as somebody who watches all the games, you watch all the games. The amount of fast, I was about to say last week that actually the amount of times that the whole kind of stop the fast break fouls disappeared, they're not calling it again. And then suddenly this one was called, and Lloyd said immediately, well, that happened twice last week. And it's happened 100 times. So then there was towards the end of the game, there was and I'm just going through all this now, deal with it now before we deal with the game. There was I think Wiley at the far end didn't get a call, and he kind of did the old players thing to, I think it was Ian Spearman. I think it was Ian Spearman, because it was a bald ref, and he refs down there and he's bald. So anyway, and as I go back down the court, Ian just let it go. And Josh from the far end called technical for comments which had not been attributed to him, and which he can't have heard because they've been made to another referee. And I'm thinking, this is not a crew which is in unison with each other. You know, he's coming in to say, well, I'm not taking that, but it's his mate. But in doing so, he's undermining the guy who heard what was said, because the players are going to be saying, well, you can call it technical. What's the problem? So, you know, I don't like, I'm not a fan of mixing and matching crews to that extent. I think it's better if you've got refs who will work together. If the refs go together around the country, that's fine. It's like the Premier League, you know, the linesmen go with the referee. Often that's their kind of crew. That's their team, so you can build on stuff. And I think just dropping somebody into Plymouth for one night on a Friday night doesn't work. In relation to the game, yeah, you always felt that Plymouth are better for having Levi and Green. To a lesser extent Green. Levi is a guy that you would like to play with because he does all the things that you would want a teammate to do without taking away his shots. You know, he takes charges, he rebounds, he gets your cheap points, and he doesn't, and he sets screens. So he does it all fairly relentlessly with little care for his body. He's probably only 6'5", with even maybe 6'6" with a ponytail extended. And you know, he actually is what they needed. They had somebody in the middle. Now, whether he's going to be able to just extend that against the athletes in this league over the next 25 games will be a question we have to wait and see. But he certainly improves them. Green, you know, he didn't shoot the ball particularly well when he was in Glasgow, but he can shoot, so he's going to have to start making some shots to be impactful, I think. Otherwise, Wiley's going to get his minutes. But they struggled with Caledonia's size in this game. They struggled to get looks. You know, Caledonia, for whatever you say about them, they are a big group. You know, Dubose, Whelan, they're like 6'3", 6'4". You know, then you got Paliza and Buttrick coming off the bench at 6'8", and he had like 16 rebounds in this game. You know, Ali Hodzic was bigger than anybody on the court, Moore as well. And I just thought they wore them down over the course of the game, and never to the point whereby it didn't, you know, the Plymouth weren't there.
So low scoring, but not much in it. Wiley with a 6-0 run to 46-43 midway through the third. It's still a 3-point game with 2:30 to go in the third, 50-47. Patrick Whelan then made his first shot of the game. He'd been 0 of 7.
Yeah, that was the other thing. Yeah, they were waiting for Whelan to get going. It wasn't, if you're not beating them when Whelan's not scoring, you're going to struggle. You're not going to go quite the whole 40 minutes.
Buttrick also made a 3, and by 3 minutes into the fourth quarter, they were 54-61 up. Wiley got it back to 4 points with 1:25 to go, but then Whelan again with a 3 killed off any sort of comeback.
No, this is where players kill me, right? Because you reminded me of that now. You know, Whelan got that. Whelan, right? What happened last week against Leicester? They're down 5. He makes 2 threes. 2 tough. Well, certainly the first one was a tough 3. The second one, a little bit of a breakdown. But he's the guy they're going to go to. Okay, so you're up 4. You're down 4 with 1 minute and 10 seconds left. The game is on that possession. Basically, the game's on that possession. They score on that possession. Your odds of winning on the old odds maker are probably down to about 10-12%. You know, 6 down with 1 minute to go, even with the ball. It's not much more than that. Lots of things have to go right. 7 down, and then you're basically done. Taylor Johnson goes under a screen. Right now, Patrick Whelan dribbles to the left, right? Just a bog standard catch on the wing in one of Caledonia's motion sets. Patrick Whelan has the screen, dribbles to the left, which he's comfortable shooting from his left hand. Instead of going on top of the screen to take away his space, Taylor Johnson went under the screen. As soon as he went under the screen, Patrick Whelan shoots it, because that's what Patrick Whelan is going to do. And he makes it. Now, that, you know, to the naked eye, oh, what a play by Whelan. What a play. You know, he's done it again. He's come up trumps. He's made the shot. To a coach's eye, that is, Taylor Johnson, what the hell are you doing? You know, I can't believe at any point in their scouting report it was going to screens on Patrick Whelan. PJ's won 500 games now. He's not telling people to go in the street under Patrick Whelan, right? So you're a minute to go. You need one stop, and you commit an error like that. That's as the fans might not see it or whatever, but that's as egregious an error as you're going to find. Maybe because you're tired, or maybe because you lose concentration. But when we talk about winning basketball, losing basketball, that's winning and losing basketball in a nutshell. Going under speed under Patrick Whelan minutes ago.
Wiley, 21 points and 9 rebounds. Faulkner, 14 points, although 3 for 14 shooting. Johnson, 13 points, 1 for 7 shooting. They were 32% from the floor, 4 for 25 from 3. So Ali Hodgic, 19 points, 7 rebounds, 9 for 11 from the free throw line. Buttrick, 14 points, 16 rebounds. Whelan, 3 of 11, but 13 points all down the.
I mean, to be absolutely fair, at the end of the day, Plymouth haven't been great, but they're a professional basketball team. So credit to Caledonia, because the Bilbao Plymouth connection probably isn't the most straightforward.
It's London to Bristol, stay in Bristol, drive down to Plymouth.
So Bilbao to London, London to Bristol.
Yeah.
London, Bristol, what? Coach?
I assume so, yes.
You didn't fly London.
No, you wouldn't fly from
down
London to Bristol.
I don't understand the distances. I forget that everything's really close down there. We're up on a metaphorical island up here. So that's not the easiest trip in the world. So to come out and to play, particularly for someone, what I will say is particularly for someone who's 6'9", and 34-year-old like Farrell Hodgic. Because it's one thing if you're 5'10" and 25 and running around and skipping around like
on a concrete floor. They shot 34% field goals, 27% 3-pointers, but they were 30 of 37 from the free throw line.
That's not a great ref game. I'm sorry. No, I didn't think it was great.
London Lions 95, Bristol Flyers 67. Rokas Gustus is in on a short-term contract. Johnson is still out. Graham Bell still out. Olaseni scored 7 in a 9-2 run. They were 18-11 midway through the first quarter. Grantham Sholawadi with 3s, and it was 36-24. Bristol just about hanging on till halftime.
Sholawadi, he gets mentioned. We mention him probably more than anybody else does, because he's a guy who never seems to get rested, never seems to get rotated. Always ends up with more minutes than you think. And in this game, I think he made a 3 in the corner, middle of the second quarter. Then got an immediate steal off Lucas and picked up the ball in the corner and knocked down another one. So he had like 6 points in 3 seconds.
And
that blew the game.
That
I watched this back this morning. I thought that blew the game because the only way that Bristol could have a shot was to stay close. And once it got to 10, you have your little runs here and there, but they didn't have the bodies to throw at London. They didn't have the size to throw at London. And London were in kind of a decent rhythm, having played the night before. Top of that, London paid Bristol enough attention to play everybody. And obviously nobody more than 22 minutes, which kind of said it all, really. They can get everything, basically win a game by 30 when no one plays more than 22 minutes. So
although
you see, Bristol's kind of
things are interlinked, aren't they? If you're winning by 30, they are. You don't
actually, I stand. I don't know if I'm corrected, but certainly, it's a valid point, absolutely. And if your second 5 is what is at that level, Bristol, they're kind of chaos basketball, which is my phrase, so it's probably a bit unfair and it's not meant as an insult, is going to struggle to work against London. What I mean by chaos basketball is that they're coming down, they're shooting their shots, Tevin Ollison, Trajan Jacob, attacking, they're constantly attacking, and they're going to crash the boards, and they're going to do it. That takes a lot of energy, and it also requires a lot of shot making. It's a lot easier to make shots over guys who are 6'3" than it is over guys who are 6'6" and 6'7" on the wing. And also, it's a lot easier to get those offensive rebounds when you're going up against tired bodies who are a bit smaller than you, as opposed to fresh bodies who are just the same size as you. So, they've struggled both times with London this year. I don't think they've played them at the Wise yet. That might be interesting, but still the same size court and the same size rims.
Yeah.
So difficult for them. That, as I say, I think they're a true reflection of a BBL team, Bristol. The way that they're a true reflection of the BBL over the past 20 years. The way they play, they just attack relentlessly, which is actually remarkably different to what they were when they came in the league.
It's true. Yeah.
Because Andreas had a team which was very much built in his kind of, I think, European ideals of the ball movement and I think eventually he kind of figured out this might be the way. I was brought up, but the way to succeed in this league is not to be like that. And it's a weird thing. It's difficult to explain to the non-initiated why that would be. If you win by playing this way in the UK, why don't they play that way in Europe and win that way?
And
it's difficult to kind of explain on a macro basis as to how different it is. And explain the logic for it. I'm not sure I can, but it is real. And if somebody likes numbers, I don't like dealing with stuff that is real, but that can't be quantified. But this can't be quantified. But anyway, that's what happened.
London had 21 in a row. Flyers scoreless for 6 minutes in the third quarter, 6-7-39. That was the game. Matt Morgan, 19.7 of 10 shooting, 5 assists. Gabriel Shenny, 13 and 7. Shalawadi, 4 of 5 shooting for 12 points. Take that. 5 rebounds and 6 assists. They were 16 of 31, both inside and outside the arc. Beautifully.
Yeah, teams are not defending the 3-point line well this year. I'm sorry, I'm being ultra critical here, maybe. But I say teams, that's a bit generic, but you can't be giving up 50%, 16 out of 31 and threes and have any shot of winning a game. And in the past, it was always kind of, you defend the rim and then you work out from there. And for me now, the game has changed to the point whereby you have to defend 3-point line first, and then you have to scramble. And defending the 3-point line means, that might sound weird. Well, of course, you've got to defend the 3-point line. You've got to defend everywhere. What defend the 3-point line mean is that you don't let people get open looks off the catch. That's what it means. And an open look is different for a different player. So an open look for one guy may be very different to an open look for another guy. And you need to know which are the ones that you're willing to give up and which are the ones that you're not. So the ones that players shoot regularly are the ones whereby they're in the corner and they get one pass on what we call the strong side and they rise up and shoot it. That's automatic. That's like 3 points going on a layup. Or the one whereby the ball's rotated across the court and thrown to the other side, and then it's thrown back, drive, and they kick it, and then they swing it to the next guy back who's at the break at the top of the key, and they shoot that one. Or the one where you go under a screen. All of those threes. And it's a psychological game in many ways. You have to know which players you're dealing with and who you're running off. And what running off means is basically you have to go out to the 3-point line to encourage them to drive past you. You can't just defend the 3-point line by, like in football, just stand in front of it and try and block the tackle. It doesn't work like that, So you have to run them off, which means you have to get out there to the point where they can't shoot it. And what you're then doing is allowing them to drive past you, and that then is where your team defense comes in. Because what
metrics, the analytics of it is that the worst shot in basketball is a 17, 18, 19 foot jump shot, because the percentages of it are relatively low versus the reward of it. So what you don't give up is a 3-point shot, because whilst the percentage is slightly lower, they get an extra point for it. And you don't give up the shot at the rim because the percentages are quite high.
And you don't give it, and there are different types of 3-point shot. So you don't give up the easier 3-point shot, which is the corner shot. The corner three, shortest distance. Closer, and also the numbers are higher. And also you don't, and the ones off the catch in particular. And it's not easy to stop the ones off the catch, but the ones off the catch are the ones you want to make them head fake or dribble or whatever. We played 10 years, and all we were ever doing was trying to force people into mid-range jump shots, in front of the post and challenge the 3-point line and make them shoot it somewhere in between. Now it's harder now because people don't go in the post anymore. So you don't necessarily have anybody down there handle it. But that was the strategy, and that's one of the NBA strategies about. It's all about avoiding mid-range 2-point jump shots. And London are really good at moving the basketball, and you're not going to stop them every time because what happens is you'll penetrate past the first one, and the guy will kick it out, and then you have to rotate out. Another player will have to change, and you're in chaos mode as a defense all the time. But at this point, there are too many teams, I'm afraid, who are giving up threes. And Manchester with this, and Newcastle with this, and Bristol with this, or just with this week alone, with just hands up there and saying, okay, if you make it, you make it. Well, that ain't getting it done. And the fact that they shot 16 of 31 threes and 16 of 31 twos, that means they got 48 points from their threes and they got 32 points from their twos, right? On the same shots. So to kind of tilt the balance of the mathematics in your favor, you have to turn some of those threes into twos.
Yeah.
And you have to commit to turning some of those threes into twos. Because, if 5 of those threes become twos and they shoot them at the same percentage, they drop 5 points. If 5 of those made threes, I don't think I think it's because teams are playing so many games. And I think because they're getting into a mindset of, contain a little bit, because players are trying to save energy for offense, lots of things. But, the desperation to win games isn't quite there, or desperation to do everything you can to win games isn't quite there defensively from what I can see. And it is there, whereas offensively, everyone's getting the numbers. So we've turned into a little bit back to the late 90s and the Billy Mims stuff. But that basically means it's kind of a fast up and down, more offense than defense. That's partly because the way basketball's changed, but I think there's also a part of it in relation to the setup of the league as well.
Ollison 17.7 rebounds, Green 11, Thomas Edwards 10 and 7 rebounds. They shot 37% from the floor, 4 of 19 from 3, but only 9 offensive rebounds. They can't win doing both of those things. So Saturday, I'll keep banging me drum. Saturday, Surrey Scorchers 73, Cheshire Phoenix 91. Gooden is out with a lower limb injury. I love those. So Robinson back into the starters. This game obviously delayed by an hour and 15 because Cheshire.
Well, that's not his arms then.
That's not his arms. Not his arms. Unless he's bending over then.
Yeah, there's been a bit of controversy about the delay. I mean, being the anorak I am, I checked the M40 website and noticed that by the time Cheshire were driving, there was a 115-minute delay due to an accident, which will generally cause you to be pretty tight to the tip-off time. It's an interesting one because I've never really thought about it, but obviously it's happened to Cheshire through bad luck twice this year. And people will say, well, yeah, okay, but they should be there earlier or by they're there earlier. And the reality is, you don't want your team getting there too early because the facilities are not set up for you to get there early. Generally, they've been on the bus, on traveling on the day. You have to kind of work out when they need to eat. Particularly from Newcastle, which we did. Everywhere's a bus trip. Everywhere gets a stop. Even Manchester got a stop. Maybe Sheffield.
Oh, you have to stop by law as well. The bus.
Yeah, 3.5 hours. So 3.5 hours. So Cheshire had to get a stop. Manchester used to stop at Hartshead on the M62. Probably only Sheffield was the only one that we wouldn't need to stop at. But then you've got to synchronize when the guys are going to eat and you have to be there enough time to get out, to get stretched, to get on court. But you don't want to also be sitting there for 3.5 hours in the gym where there's nothing to do, getting cold, because that means you've left earlier, which means your body functions and the players' body shapes are out of time, because if they're left 3.5 hours, they've already eaten probably on the bus. So then they're going to be short by the time they come to play. So it's quite a difficult kind of circle, square. So that's why you don't want to get there too early. Now, there's an answer to all of this, and then people get coming up with, we should do this, should do that. The answer to all of this is for the league to mandate stuff, which doesn't happen. So at this point in time, you only have to have the court available for an hour before the game. Okay, so if you're at Newcastle, you're not getting the court at 6:30 because there's generally games going on before. Kids running around, because of that. It helps fill the crowd, basically, sells tickets and gets gets kids playing on the main court. It's a big thing for them. If you're at Cheshire, you're not getting on the court an hour before because they're still marking the lines because they've only got the leisure for so long. And I think Surrey's probably somewhere similar, but I'm not sure. And a few of the other places will be similar. So that would cause difficulties. Away teams aren't provided for anything in relation to food at the moment or anything like that. When they get to a gym, there's nothing more than kind of just getting into. You just get in there and you sit on the bleachers, basically, if the court's not ready. We had one game at the Copper Box where Vince wouldn't even let us in because he was still practicing on the court. At 1:45, he was still doing his walkthrough, and he sent his lackey to the front desk to say, "You're not coming in yet." I said, "Well, you aren't coming in. It's 1:45. We want to get in the locker room." Well, will you promise not to look? All right. You know what I mean? It's just nuts. So the whole thing is, disorganized as far as there's nothing laid down. It's unregulated. And that's why this is going to happen, and that's why this is going to keep happening. Because at the moment, there is absolutely no incentive for any traveling team to get to the gym more than 2 hours before.
The other thing about it was sometimes it's going to happen even if you do all of that. I'm guessing in football they have regulations, but I was listening to the radio the other week and Rangers were stuck in something and their game was an hour late kicking off. So,
I get that. And I think the Chelsea under-19 team went to Bournemouth instead of Brighton. That was this week as well. So part of it is obviously sortable, and the people online saying, "Oh well, maybe you should make teams have overnight stays the night before." Okay, well, who's going to pay for that? And secondly, we can't even arrange double headers the night before at the moment, so that's a bit too much. The problem I had with it all was the knock-on, which meant that 1,500 people in Sheffield was stood waiting until 8:20 for a tip-off. That was a pretty substantial 8:15 for a tip-off, and thank God it didn't go to overtime. It could have been the famous Newcastle Thames Valley game, which finished
the plan. The assumption was, with my insider knowledge, the assumption was that we wouldn't get to that game for the start of it, and therefore, but they get it because it was originally 8:10, and then relatively late on they gave an extra 5 minutes just to.
I just don't. I get that. I just think it's there's a direction of travel which I've banged on about for a while now, and I know there's some merit in it, and some of it is probably overreaction, but the direction of travel is away from the people in the gyms and towards the convenience of everything else. And I think there's going to be a point in time whereby that bites everybody. I think even tonight at Plymouth, it's 6 o'clock. A 6 o'clock tip on a Sunday was not being attended in the same way that a 3 o'clock tip on a Sunday was. You saw the seats at the top which weren't filled, and I'm quite good at scouring the various different gyms for sight of what's going on. We've seen it with Caledonia playing games on a Thursday which haven't been as well represented, and Sheffield as well. When they've had to play that game on a Thursday, it wasn't as good. And I just think that somewhere along the line, and Aaron Rain did an interview with Drew and Jay this week, and it didn't really address anything of the issues on the ground. And I think there are issues, whatever is going on, and however much money has been invested in the central kind of focal point of Planet Stockley Park or wherever you guys are. Ealing, my fault, Ealing, Planet Ealing, that's fine, but I'm waiting to see the improvements around the country. And at the moment, I'm not seeing any of them. And I thought I would not have been happy if I'd been with an 8 or 9 year old kid. And I know this is probably it's getting a bit hypothetical, a bit twisty, and there's always malcontents, and I get that. But I'm being told about, well, why isn't the game starting? Oh, the game's not starting because Cheshire was stuck in a crash on the M40 4 hours ago. And I think there needs to be some degree of, if the game can the game not start without you guys commentating on it? Do they not have the YouTube? Ultimately,
it could be played, but it wouldn't be broadcast.
None of it.
But it wouldn't. Yes, basically.
Well, but even after you finish, you couldn't join it.
Yeah. No, that's what would have happened. We would have joined it.
You couldn't broadcast it without commentary.
No.
Well, I'll not even go there. That just I'll not even go there. But that so because ultimately you have to have plans for when things go wrong. and that I thought, the disaster management plan, to use a phrase of the legal aid board in my world, the disaster management plan wasn't really there. And unfortunately, the people who lost out were the people in Sheffield who had to hang around for even longer. So there we go. Anyway, that's all that done. I know I had a couple of text messages saying we're interested in what you're going to say about this. So there you go. It's said. Please, can we start looking after the people in the gyms and start, because they're the people who are ultimately, at this point in time, they are the people who are funding the clubs. Now, it may well be in due course that the various revenue-making schemes for across the pond and otherwise change that, and that we get the revenue streams in from elsewhere, which can override the amount of expense that's been incurred in setting up everything that's been set up to encourage those revenue streams. That might happen. We all hope it does happen. But whilst it's not happening, then clubs cannot afford to be 300 or 400 people short every week. And it's a hell of a bad look for the league as well. So we have to pay more attention to them, more attention to the people in the gym, please. Anyway,
the people in the gym.
We also need to think of the savings to the planet of you and Ro having to drive from London to Leicester every week.
Yeah, no, but it's closer than Surrey, and it's closer.
Yeah, I get that.
Maybe not Sheffield, but yeah,
I get that. Can you not have a portable studio in Leicester? Can you not set you up with like a little portable, like a TARDIS or something like that?
The people in the gym got to play one-on-one with Scorcher prior to the start of this game. So
I got an issue with Scorcher. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of the Scorcher running, and he's running right down in front of the camera in front of the game. If I'd been sitting in the front row, I'd be telling him to get himself out of the way. Do your running around, do your jumping. It's like the dog thing.
When the kids were scoring on him before the game, they were all high.
That's fine. That's good. Do your stuff before the game. Do your stuff in the timeout. God knows there's enough of them. Do all of that stuff. Stay away during the game. Let the game speak.
So Cheshire did look a bit laggy after all of that, but Surrey could only open up a 6-point lead in the first half. They did manage to get a decent lead late in the second to 52-38. They made 10 threes in the first half.
Surrey always going to get better if Justin Robinson's starting. Right? He's still their best player. Right? I say still. I mean, he's 34, 35, whatever. He's come about from injury. He is still their best player. He's been around. He shoots the ball. We'll be saying last week, one of the highest clips of any British or American guard in the league in the last decade. He knows the league. He's competitive, and he's won. And having him in the starting lineup, I thought helped them. They made, as you say, a ton of shots. Having Cheshire stuck on the bus will also have helped them. I'll say that, man. I did think 115-minute delay and you're still tipping off an hour late. I thought that maybe they could be getting there half an hour earlier on that plan, but never mind. They paid for it, but a team that gets there late pays for it because it's not in their legs and that they're struggling. And Charger in particular, he struggled to make shots, which he's been making. And Rideau picked up a couple of fouls. And Surrey got into a nice rhythm offensively. They started knocking down shots and they play at times some really quite pretty basketball. Lloyd has them playing in spurts, the ball moving, the ball rotating, attacking Jameson finishing in the post and rebounding, and those guys making shots, Cooper making shots, Teo making shots, and they look like, this is a proper team. But what they don't have is what you describe as the kind of athletic physicality that Cheshire have. And on a more brutal level, they don't have the dogs that Cheshire have. And dogs is a basketball phrase for, your gritty centre midfielder.
I think anybody who's watched this weekend will have heard LaQuincy Rideau referring to himself as having a bit of dog in him.
Amazingly, that's been on so many times. But because I've been watching all these games on fast forward, I've never watched it once. Because I don't want, because it somehow it makes
the full feature is on YouTube if you want to see.
I feel like almost I'm winning, you see. It's my rebelling against the flag, against the galactic superpower. If I fast forward through all these timeouts, it makes me feel almost vindicated. So anyway, they're dogs. They are dogs. They have 2 or 3 of them, Maceo Jack, LaQuincy Rideau, probably David Ulf as well, probably Kristen too, but I haven't seen enough of them. But they're in there, and Surrey don't really have that, and that kind of let them down in this game.
So mid-third quarter, they could have done with some dogs because they were up 13. It looked like this is the moment you've got to finish them here. The old what was the fighting game? Finish him. They needed to do it there and then they didn't, and then the three ball stopped dropping. The offense dried up, and from 3 minutes to go in the third quarter, 66-56, back-to-back threes from Rideau. And even though he fouled out, by the way, on back-to-back block calls, they scored 17 unanswered points to go 66-73 ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of things about that. Firstly, I thought it was interesting that Cheshire changed when Reich came into the game midway through the third quarter. Cheshire had been, as I say, playing their fairly kind of random, attacking basketball, get the ball to where we need, shoot the shots, and the shots weren't dropping, and they're not a team which is particularly interested in making the extra pass. They get the ball to their scorers, and their scorers go and score. Rye will make the pass, but Rideau will get the ball to where it needs to go. But those guys are, if Jack's got the catch in the basketball and he's got an ounce of space, it's going up. If Kristen's got a basketball, it's going up. Or he's attacking the rim. Ulf's going to rebound, and Skylar White, if he catches it, it's going up. There's no real second or third actions. You've just got to defend the first action really well. And that wasn't working for them, probably because they didn't have the legs and they'd been in the bus and all that. And, they played a few games. So then Rye comes in, and they're a different team with Rye because everything slows down. And they become a lot more methodical with him because he's looking to pick a hole. He's looking to draw a double team. He's looking to flick a pass to somebody. And it's kind of a nice alternative way to play. And I thought that's what happened to a certain degree, where I got a couple of layups. Then he did a dump off pass in the post when he drew a double for a layup. And in relation to Surrey, I thought it was a question of them not finding that right lineup. Josh Steele was out the game for a long time. And there's a time where, and obviously Justin Robinson played his 8 minutes, and then he sat down, and then he came in, I think, quite early in the fourth quarter as well. But there's always a time when the game's being played, when the game is really on it. The game is really kind of at risk, on level. And it's not always the last 2 minutes. In fact, it's rarely the last 2 minutes. And in this game, it was that 17-0 run. And it's almost like you have the alarm bells ringing in your head. You have to get the fire. It doesn't matter if they're tired or not. You have to get your guys on. Bailey came in and played for Surrey at that point. He did all right. He took a couple of charges. He competed, but he couldn't finish, so they couldn't score. And Cheshire were able to overextend on the 3-point line because Cheshire are quite long. So when I talked before about teams not defending the 3-point line properly, Cheshire can do that because they've got Jack, they've got Kristen, and Holden if he's fit. All those guys who are long, who are 6'4", 6'5", Matthews, 6'3", 6'4", long arms. So they can challenge those shots better. And that means leave some space under the rim. But Bailey wasn't big enough to finish, which is where they missed, obviously, Hunt, and they missed another big guy. And so you're not finishing inside, you're not getting the open shots outside, and the game spirals away from you. And they haven't got the mental resolve, I'm afraid.
No.
To
They ended up scoring once in the last 5 minutes as well. So even when they got down 7, they didn't have a response at all.
And that's when you need that's when, there was one, I think there was during that period, maybe during that period there, I think Wang had a 2-on-1 fast break. He didn't pass it at the right time and, threw it to the corner and turned it over. They just, that's where you need your defense to get you cheap points. That's where you need to get to the foul. You need to know somebody who can get you the ball, get you to the foul line and get you cheap points. And somebody take control and do that. And it can't always be Justin Robinson. It can't always be him. And so it looked, and it probably was, quite a limp failure, to be honest. And they are, they got given a game at Plymouth. That game was done. They got given it by a call from the ref. They were down 7 with a minute and a half to go. They got given it by Plymouth, letting them back in it as well. They've won one game against the Manchester team on the 4th in 7 days. And if you have to think about it, that win does not look as good now as it probably did at the time. And where Manchester are at. They've played basketball, which is well beyond that of a 2-win or a 1-win team. But that's what they are. So I just think I think it's a spirit thing. I think it's a mentality thing. I don't know if he's going to be able to change it. As I say, they play some nice stuff. They move the basketball. You know how Lloyd wants them to play. But at some point, someone's got to dig in. Someone's got to take a charge. Someone's got to, Bailey tried. Someone's got to get a rebound. Someone's got to get the foul line. Someone's got to say, we're not going to go down this way. And giving up a, 35-6 finish to the game or something like that. It's home on your own floor against a team that got there, which is missing one of its guys, and it's got another guy just coming back from injury. That was a winnable game. Should have won the game.
Robinson, 15 points, 5 assists. Cooper, 13. Wang, 11 and 9. Steele, 11. 10 of 18 in the first half from 3, 2 of 12 in the second. Christian, 19.6 rebounds. Rideau, 15.7 assists, 3 steals. Jack and Rye both had 12. 27 points off turnovers. You talked about Surrey's inability to get cheap ones off their points. 27 off 17 turnovers.
That's outstanding,
outstanding, Leicester Riders 111, Newcastle Eagles 88. Defoe was in for his first domestic start of the season. So Delpesh off the bench. Lawle and Austin both out still respectively. Eagles started hot, 12 points off turnovers, 4 or 5 for 3 out to an 11-19 lead.
Yeah, there's 2 very poor defensive teams in the first half. I'm sorry. Here's me picking the negatives. These guys are making shots left, right, and centre. But and the Eagles turnovers, they did start off with a couple, and Johnson got going. McGill made some threes early. Whitfield made some threes early. Which again, if you're Leicester, you're not happy giving up. Defoe in the starting line, it makes a massive difference to their defense because it just solidifies them. It's not a question of him even making plays at times; it's just being in the right place. Took a charge. There was a lovely bit about 4 minutes into the game where Darius got called for a foul and did his face. And then Rob did it behind him. And Rob mimed him for about 10 seconds, which I thought was great. I really enjoyed it. It's like, my God, this has been going back 15 years, and so that made a difference in Newcastle, not letting them get off to a start. But to be honest, as soon as Darius went out of the game, Newcastle's defense, Neighbour came in. Neighbour's gone all Mockford on us. He's just, I don't think we're going to see him again until March. His defense was embarrassing in both games this week. Against the European team, he fell over twice in the post. Against Leicester, he only played 4 minutes because he couldn't guard a chair, basically. And Newcastle being down already with Spencer not having played at all and still sitting on the bench, and Austin not playing, the Newcastle were effectively down to 7 meaningful players, which I think hurt them in the long run in this game. Leicester got going. Leicester made shots, and Leicester shooting that gym every day, and they've got good shooters. So it's not a surprise that they made shots. What was a surprise was that even when Newcastle are making plays at the other end, both teams in the first half were very keen on celebrating threes, but no one's celebrating a stop.
No.
It was 50-odd at the half. And
so
in that
Eagles
game,
were 8 for 12 from 3 early in the second quarter. They stayed in front, got out, so 8. Leicester come back, but then end of the second quarter, Mackenzie and Asbury with threes. Leicester with an 11-2 finish. It was 53-50. The lead.
What I will say is the whole environment of the game was a notch down. I think both teams had kind of figured out that this kind of macho stupidity wasn't the way forwards. There was a couple of little things with Asbury, but nothing of any substance at all. Both the 2 teams running up and down, almost as a reaction to it.
There was a point. I think it must have been in the second half because of where it happened, where I think Holmes and Green had bumped into each other, and Green had fell over, and Holmes actually tried to pick him up while the game was still playing on. He sort of reached out to help him out, and then Leicester stole the ball, and he's like, well, I've got to run now in transition, you'll have to get yourself up, sort of thing. So that it was almost like the game had been neutered. It was an American XL bully that had been neutered. But they're illegal now, so it couldn't be that. Well, it will be in January. But the problem was that Newcastle didn't have as many effective players as Leicester did. Didn't have the guard rotation Leicester did, and we're involved in a scoring race on somebody else's floor. Yeah.
And those three things, I mean, you're going to lose.
Yeah,
The only way you're going to win is if you can get some stops. And what happened was at the beginning of the third quarter, the game turned on Defoe's third foul, which I think was probably a 4-point game at that point, maybe a 6-point game, 4 or 6-point game. And by the time he came back in the game in the fourth quarter, it was a 25-point game and the game was done.
So Leicester had the first 6 points of the third quarter. There was an early timeout, which didn't stop the run. Holmes and Thomas pushed it out to 73-59. It was 20-6 in a 4-minute 30-second spell. They did get it back to 9, but then Holmes, Washington, McKenzie hit threes, 15 unanswered points for Leicester to 94-69 early in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and they were getting the easy threes that I was talking about with Bristol and London. They were getting short. They were getting corner threes off one pass. They were getting corner threes off one, pass off the top screen and roll. Newcastle weren't. What you tell me? What is the opposite of being on a string? I don't know. They're off a string, whatever. They're not moving in unison. There's no containment at the point of the basketball, which means that the whole defense is jeopardized, and they're not committed then to running people off. And because Newcastle are generally small, the guards are small. Them just standing up with a hand, McGill and Johnson putting a hand up is just it's no impact at all. They're not there because they're not changing the shots. And because Leicester had got into a rhythm early, making shots, they continued to make shots, and Newcastle didn't. And as I say, I thought Darius should have been back in earlier when the game was on the line. I thought by the time he came back in, the game was done. And then he played the last 7 minutes, which I didn't really think there was much sense to, given that he's 38 and they need him on Tuesday night in Latvia. And also McGill played the last 7 minutes. McGill played 37 minutes in this game, and it's like you're getting blown out, put the kids in the game. At that point, save your legs and move on to the next game. So I thought there was a bit of muddled stuff going on with Newcastle, but then again, he's only got basically 7 reliable players. As I say, I'm not sure what's going on with Neighbour, no clue what's going on with Spencer, but they're not in any way deep enough to withstand a Leicester team in rhythm. And at the moment, the Leicester team, we know the Leicester team is talented. I think the Leicester team are what they are. They're going to be inconsistent but talented. Pinson came out and made plays in this game. Asbury's going to make shots. McKenzie's going to help them. Their position, their kind of group in the middle, we're not quite so sure. He's kind of toggling Bridges and Walker and Idowu and whatever. Kind of helps not having Law, because you don't have to find those minutes from somebody else. But I don't think Newcastle had the appropriate fear of Leicester's ability. The amount of times that Holmes got to the middle to make that little float. I mean, Holmes had a career night and he did everything that's on the scouting report. You let him get to the middle. You let him do all the things that he wants to do. And I don't think, and as I say, you let these guys shoot threes. And I get the impression with Newcastle, it's kind of, every game it's like, okay, we're going to see what you guys have got before we start defending you.
Yeah.
And that's not sustainable, because once they've shown you what they've got, they're feeling so good about themselves, they're going to continue to show you what they've got.
Yeah.
And it's a bad mentality to get in. So yeah, it was a thoroughly deserved win for Leicester, but it wasn't about the third quarter. It was about the first 2 quarters.
Yeah.
First 2 quarters made the third quarter inevitable. That might sound strange, but the way that the game was played.
Holmes, his first missed shot of the game was actually 3 minutes into the fourth quarter. He finished 12 for 14 shooting for 28 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Pinson 16 points, 5 of 6 shooting and 6 assists.
I think from memory, you say he'd only been shooting 39% prior to that or something like that. I heard a number about Holmes. His numbers weren't particularly high up to that game. So that's an outlier, which means that either he's had a hell of a game or the defense has been suboptimal.
Yeah, or both. McKenzie 5 of 8 for 16 points and 7 assists. They shot 60% from the floor, 16 of 28 from 3-point range, 51 bench points. Johnson 25 and 5 assists. McGill 5 of 15 for 15 points and 5 assists. Green 13 points and 14 rebounds. And Darius Defoe 19 minutes and 14 seconds was a +2.
Some of them was a few cheap points at the end, but I think realistically it was kind of probably -2 or -4. But Del Pesce was a -25 and Defoe was a +2, and obviously plus minuses are difficult. And it's not to say Del Pesce played badly.
but
it's just that it's
but
the
Defoe
impact.
was the outlier.
Yes,
Defoe was
the
the
outlier of all of
outlier
them.
on his team. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's the impact they have on the unit. Yeah.
So let's go for the late game. Sheffield Sharks 92, Manchester Giants 73. They obviously signed Prentice Nixon and released Allen, but he didn't play.
Yeah, a little bit hard on Allen. I thought a
Yeah.
little bit hard on Allen, but this is kind of it's either, to be fair to him, he doesn't make quick cuts. He lets it play out, and he looks at what he's got, and it happened last year as well. He changed a couple of guys, not much before this time, and he's obviously decided that they just need a little bit more. I think the problem with Allen was you were never really sure if he was a 1 or a 2, and he wasn't really a 3-point shooter. And he's obviously a rookie, so he's inconsistent. So he's come across a veteran who obviously hopes is going to give him a bit more. Looking at his resume, he appears to be more of an out-and-out 3-point shooter. And he's probably thinking about that with having Glasgow coming back as well, because you got Glasgow and Ramsey. He probably don't need a point as much. So he's brought in more another kind of a wing shooter, who we'll hope can play with the starting unit and the reserves. So yeah, it's probably a proactive move. That's what coaches have to do this time of year. They have to project forward to May, as to when you have to balance the impact on the group with the impact on your ability to win. It's difficult at times, but a little bit harsh on Alan. He wasn't awful.
And Legend was back for a bit.
Right.
Even in the first 7 minutes, it was actually when Stewart came off the bench that things got going for Sheffield, and he did it in a slightly different way, going to the basket rather than shooting threes, although he did hit some threes. They had 9 in a row to lead 25-16.
Yeah, well, Stewart's a bit of a sleeper, isn't he? Firstly, Ramsey was back. That's the biggest thing for Sheffield. Yeah. Sheffield with Ramsey and Sheffield without Ramsey are two entirely different animals. Stewart's a bit of a sleeper because he's the guy who can score the ball, no question. And he fits what they do because he doesn't take extraneous or unnecessary dribbles. He tends to stay within his skill set. Obviously, the problem is if he's 2 of 10 from 3 out of 10 shots, that's staying within your skill set in a bad way. If he's 4 or 10, that's staying outside your skill set in a good way. This game underwhelmed me, I'm afraid, possibly because I was so rated at the fact that it started so late. And it just seemed like a rite of passage. It seemed inevitable. Manchester at this point just seemed too far gone.
Yeah, they had an 11-0 run to cut it to take the lead, actually 25-27. But then in the middle of the second quarter, in the space of about 2 minutes, Robertson called for 2 unsportsmanlike fouls. One off the ball, sort of wrestling with Cook and sort of throwing him out the way, and the second one for using his head to free up some space again against Cook. So he was disqualified on that.
Well, here's the thing. You see, I didn't know Robertson was playing, and I didn't know that happened because I must have missed that bit. I have no idea why.
No, right.
So full disclosure, you're on the hook for this one.
You're fast forwarding through the disqualifications.
I can't believe it. There must have been a reason.
You didn't see him giving it that on the way out.
No, I didn't see any of it. I must have been so pissed off with Newcastle's performance.
Yeah.
The night before.
So they then went on an 8-0 run after the disqualification. Sheffield.
Maybe I picked it up in the third quarter. And I didn't remember to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
All right. So was it? I missed the disqualification.
Well, I think they were.
Talk about it next week.
Yeah, the first one was in the background, and they were obviously wrestling for space, and he sort of had him, and he sort of went like that. And the second one, he's trying to go at him, and he just sort of goes a bit like that with his head, which doesn't really work on audio, but maybe.
No, was it? So you're comfortable with it, were you?
Yeah, I think they were both probably. Was
he called for the first one before he was called for the second one?
Yeah, obviously so they come in order.
Yeah, but the whistle was blown for the first one.
Sorry, no, they were about 2 minutes apart.
All right, okay, fair enough.
They weren't on the same play. They were about 2 minutes.
You see, well, that's indicative of. That's indicative of a team which is dysfunctional. Players stop operating within the normal rules because the boundaries aren't there. Players get overly emotional.
The interesting thing is Cook got unsportsmanlike fouled 3 times, so I think it might be indicative to how he gets underneath people's skin. Probably, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's also more indicative of the lack of, as I say, the first thing that goes with a locker room that isn't functioning the way it should is discipline. Right, that is always the first thing. You have to have an ironclad control over your team, because players are what players are, and players will express, beg your pardon, will express their frustrations in various different ways. Yeah. And the more frustrations they have, the more likely they are to be expressed. And that's what's happened here.
Yeah.
And he says, without having seen any.
So yeah. So then mid third quarter. Yeah, mid third quarter, a 10-0 run by Sheffield. Did you see the dunk?
Quite right. What was the score when that happened?
That was I think it was 32-32 at that point, and then they scored 8 in a row. I think it was. But in the third quarter, you're now looking at it, aren't you? The third quarter is 56-46.
Yeah, I was actually looking at it, but I've turned it off now.
Did you see Pipkin's dunk?
I saw Pipkin's dunk. That was impressive. I got, I like that. Okay, I'll look at it. I'll give you a comment on it next week.
Okay. And then 66-46, and that was basically the ball game at that point. As you say, it was a bit of a waiting to happen. So Stewart, 7 of 12 for 19 points. Cook, 14.7 fouls drawn. Nichols and Pipkins, 13 points each. They were 50% from both 2 and 3. McNeil, 19. Anderson, 14. Lewis, 12. They were 37% and 24%.
That means he'll be suspended next week, doesn't it?
No, because it was two unsportsmanlikes.
All right. So it wasn't
it wasn't a disqualification. Sorry, no. It was 2 unsportsmanlikes.
Okay, fair enough.
So Sunday, Bristol Flyers 94, Caledonia 77. Both the teams on their third game of the week, but Caledonia the ones doing all the travelling. Yes. Obviously they went to London and back Bristol, but the M4 is not quite as far. And it looked a bit like that early on. Ollison and Jacob hitting threes, 12-0 run. They led by 10 after 3 minutes.
Yeah, they were too fast for Caledonia. Caledonia, they struggled, and it was a travel. Forget, we only see what's on the court. We have to know what's happened. They haven't slept in their own beds for a week. That's great if you're in the NBA and you're traveling around 5-star hotels and charter flights. It's not so great if you're not in the NBA and you're not doing that. Bristol, obviously, Tuesday at home, Thursday in London, back at home again straight away, time to prepare for the game, etc. And Bristol play with the kind of degree of manic energy that we've talked about. That is probably what you don't want to meet if you're Caledonia. You want a slow down game that you can dig yourself into. Instead, what they got was Ollison and Jacob making threes from everywhere. And some of them were tough shots.
So runs of 6-0 and 5-0 in the second quarter. It was 50-25 just before halftime. They did cut it back a little bit, but never really looked like making a
Well, I thought the biggest thing that this told me about Caledonia was Gareth eventually gave up on his bench. Because in the second half, Dubose and Whelan played the whole second half. Now you'd think, 3 games in 5 days on the road, you'd think that wouldn't be the time to be overexpending people who've been playing. But he didn't play Jovovicic in the second half. He didn't play Malcolm. Kyle Johnson came in for Please. Buttrick played a little bit, and then the 2 centres rotated en masse. But he didn't play any of his guards. He stuck with Dubose and Whelan the whole time. And the reason for that was because they at the moment he took them out and the run happened, they were done.
Yeah.
He just tried to extend it close to keep it close, but that then resulted in them burning out a little bit. Also, probably to make a point to the rest of them. But I'm not sure if I'm not sure if it's a mentality with those other guys, or whether they're just not. They got undressed in Bilbao, in that third quarter. Kind of pretty close to kind of embarrassment. Not necessarily as starters, but some of the other guys. And he's going to have to straddle the line of, giving them confidence with being realistic. And in this game, he was realistic, and he said, "Right, I'm going with my guards or my two starting guards all the way." But they were too far gone. I mean, the one thing I will say is I thought Ali Hodzic again was exceptional. Thought there were a couple of. I thought it was a very very inexperienced refereeing crew. I didn't know any of the refs. I was coaching 4 years ago, so I'm pretty sure that all three of those refs are new in the last 4 years. Maybe one of them might have been around a bit longer, but I didn't know any of them to speak to. I thought when you get inexperienced crews, often there's kind of a lot of marginal contact which is called, and I thought there was in this game. I thought there was times that Caledonia defended the Bristol drives quite well, but they got calls. Patrick Whelan got very frustrated near the end. I think he got a technical.
He did.
And I could understand why, because I just thought that there was a few bailouts. Hollison and Jacob are putting their head down and getting to the rim, and then there's a bit of incidental contact at the rim, and they're getting 2 shots for it. And I understand why Caledonia were quite frustrated with that, particularly as it impacted their any chance out of a comeback. But none of that impacts the fact that they were 25 down at the half. Which is the main reason why they lost the game.
Jacob, 27.7 of 11 for three.
Yeah.
Some of the shots, though, you just go, that's
great shot. He's
a
tough shot maker. He's a no-no.
There was one late in the game where it didn't. The Caledonia weren't going to win. You didn't think, but it was still in the realms of possibility. And they got an offensive rebound, and he just shot it. It was like there's 14 seconds on the clock. What are you doing? Oh, going in.
It was feeling it, and I mean that's it. You see, you say, well, they're missing Johnson. Okay, well that just gives Jacob an opportunity.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
No, if you're a player, one guy's injured. Well, just more shots for me.
Yeah.
There's only so many shots in the game. More shots for me. I'm going to take my opportunity.
And take it. He did, as I say, 7 of 11 for 3. Lucas 16 points, 9 assists. Ollison 16. Whelan 19.6 assists. DeBose 12.6 rebounds, 8 assists. And Ali Hodzic 6 of 7 for.
But it was very reminiscent of the. It's very reminiscent of the earlier in the season when Newcastle did Lithuania on a Wednesday and then home on a Friday and away on a Sunday at Sheffield and utterly got blown out in Sheffield. This time you've got Bilbao on a Wednesday, Plymouth on a Friday. There's a time whereby it is literally one step too far.
If I was a betting man, and obviously I don't do that sort of thing, Dave, I would have banked on a home win there. Definitely. And I would have gone for a home win in the next game as well, obviously.
Somebody did.
I bet somebody did. Plymouth City Patriots 94, London Lions 70. No Decker, Nelson, Taylor, Phillip, or Connor Morgan. Bracket Sharma, but obviously if you've got the new guy, then
he's out for a while, no doubt.
Presumably, well, it said a short-term contract or whatever, but you can't say he's out and then he's playing as well. It's one is replaced.
True.
So, but the rest of them, you can say they were out. You were on Twitter, Dave, questioning.
Yeah, I wasn't impressed with this. There's a few things. I mean, I'm trying to it's happened quite quickly, so it's trying to get my head around being balanced about it, and it's one of those issues, which. I want to try and put it in the context of everything else and put it into context because, we've always, and I also want to desperately avoid trying to say anything which is in any way hypocritical or against what previously said about certain circumstances because we've been in these situations before. The first thing is obviously it's eerily reminiscent of what happened in Glasgow last in the trophy game last February. Where not only did they put out a team which was missing most of their talent, they then played the guys who were effective 15 minutes a game and took them out when it mattered and lost that game by 2 points, which gave the league a fantastic showpiece moment when David Slow made a 3 in the corner and you got yourself on a T-shirt.
There you go. There's my T-shirt.
There's a
Look, I've got it
T-shirt.
on. Yeah,
Indeed,
got it on.
great T-shirt for radio.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
so that all worked out fine. But we had about half an hour about it last time. I don't want to repeat all of that because it'll be on there, and I'm sure we'll do a link to the half an hour about the various ramifications and concerns. There are two things. Firstly, what are the rules? Well, I don't know, but the rules used to be that you were not entitled.
So the one thing I do know is years ago, when the league title was over, Leicester and or Newcastle always rested their players the day after.
Yes, we did.
There came a point where that and obviously there was a trophy game where it was basically Charnwood against Sheffield. There came a point where that was no longer permitted because there was a trophy game between Leicester and London where neither really wanted to play their full team because it didn't matter, but they were forced to. And the year Leicester won the league with 2 defeats, was it Gino's first year?
Yeah.
Again, they were wanting to rest some people, and they were basically told they weren't allowed.
Yeah, and so that was mine.
And my take on it is that's crap.
Yeah,
to me, that's crap.
This is why I have the difficulties in trying not to be hypocritical, because I agree with you. I agree with you. However, there is another side to it. Firstly, if that is the rule, then what London have done is probably breached the rule. If that rule is still there tonight, right? I think it would be very difficult to suggest that none of those players that didn't play were in a position whereby they couldn't play. Of course, that rule is a paper tiger. Nothing is likely to happen to it. But the two issues I have with, obviously, and this is a slightly different situation because those teams had those other situations. They'd already kind of earned their stripes because they'd won the league.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was May and not
December. The same in the trophy game that I referenced. Group
was
game.
It not? Well,
there was a trophy. It was the last round of the trophy group game with Leicester and London that didn't impact on anything.
Right, it didn't impact. Okay.
But they were both made to play all their players and potentially.
Yeah. So, but this is an impactful. There's no question that this is an impactful game. Now, I have two issues, to be blunt. The first one is one I alluded to on Twitter, which is, how did the spread change? The spread was at 10 o'clock this morning. The spread was 22.5 points to Plymouth. By the time 15 minutes before the game, I checked it again. The spread was 16 points. Immediately,
presumably, people have seen they will put out who is inactive. Presumably,
well, they didn't.
There was a tweet because I didn't see the beginning of this. So I then went back to see. I always find it's easier to just look at the social media, and you'll see this in the starting 5 graphic. It tells you who's inactive. So that was my way of noting down.
Well, okay, I'll put that conspiracy theory away for now and come back to it later. But in any event, I went back and suddenly it's a 16-point spread. And I'm like, okay, well, who's playing? So immediately logged on to live stats, and you establish, why that is. So I'd like to know when that happened, how straightforward they were in relation to who was playing and who wasn't playing. What have we got? I've got a tweet here. I've got their starting lineup at 3 hours before the game. I've got a tweet about Dante Grantham being there.
The starting 5 graphic tells you who's inactive. My take on it is, right, the issue I had with the trophy. The issue I had with the trophy was the fact that it was
that's but that's 17:55. That's 5 minutes before the tip. The spread had changed before that.
Okay.
I just think there's something very shady going on. I can't prove it, but I'm not impressed in that way. And
I don't really want to go down that line.
No, I'm not asking you to comment on it. I'm not asking you to comment on it.
My thing about it is, I have no problem in a regular league game that is the 3rd game in 4 days, whatever it is, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, with them resting whoever they want to rest, as long as there is enough of a team out there to be able to win the game. And my view was there was enough of a team out there to be able to win the game. My view was they didn't play very well. They turned the ball over 22 times, and Plymouth had 28 points off those turnovers. Plymouth made shots early on, got hot, and London weren't equipped to chase it down. And I don't really have a problem with that.
I do, because my view was that they didn't have a team out there that was equipped to win that game. And I can back that up by the fact that when I found out I was playing, I put some money on Plymouth to prove that point. Let's be clear about this. Sandy, Kaboza, Justice has played 2 minutes, has played one game. It looks like way out of shape. Quay's played one game, he played 10 minutes in 12 months. The young lad whose name I forget, who's the 18-year-old kid. Those guys are not ready to play BBL games at a high level at this point in time. Now you say, oh, well, Kaboza has played well. He has played well over a period of time when he's surrounded by very, very good players. Okay, you say, oh, well, Sandy's been playing minutes. He has, but they're the minutes where London haven't been doing so well. You know, ultimately, that leaves you with Matt Morgan, Gabe Olaseni, Mo Sulawade, and Dante Grantham. And Matt Morgan, Gabe Olaseni, and Dante Grantham played 47 minutes between them. So don't come to me and say, oh, that's a team that's capable of winning that game if you're going to play those three guys 15 minutes each. And then throw it the guy. They got beat by 25. They could have got beat by 40.
So,
right? And
but I suppose the pushback on that is
because they're open and they're able.
Yeah. I suppose the pushback on that is, had it been a 5-point game, might they have played more minutes? Is some of the reaction to the, oh, we're down 25 here. There's no point in burning these guys out to chase it back. In converse to what you just said about playing Patrick.
Well, it's a good argument, but it doesn't fit with what happened because they played 7 minutes. Olaseni and Morgan played 8 minutes each in the first half when they were down 25, and I checked that. They then played the first 5 minutes of the third quarter. Now, you might argue, or you might have played a little bit more, but at that point, they're down 22 with 15 minutes in the game to go, and he takes them out. Then, you know.
But isn't that because?
Well, no, because you put them back in at the fourth quarter. I'm sorry. To me, the issue with this is the issue is a fundamental thing. I think you've nailed the point. I think you've got the nub of the point. Did they put out a team that was capable of winning the game? And the answer is, oh well, they've got a deep squad. Yeah, well, they've got 15, 16 players. It doesn't mean players 12 or 16 are BB already. Right? You could say, well, that's part of their squad. Well, they are part of their squad, but they haven't really played much. Okay. I don't think they did. I think that if I'm Manchester and Surrey, I'm particularly peeved that, in my view, they haven't committed their own resources that they had available to win that game.
So just to ask you that question then, because you've obviously said earlier that Leicester and Newcastle were within their rights to do it because
and that's that's where I'm difficult.
So how is this game any more or less valuable than Worcester, who beat Leicester at the end of one season? I remember when Leicester had already won the league and the night before, or whoever, you know what I mean? What's the difference?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question. I'm trying to get my head around it, and this is why the first question is, what are the rules?
Yeah, the rules. Neither of us know.
Because I don't want to get all hoity-toity high and mighty on it if the rules, if they're acting fully within the rules. Because if they're acting fully within the rules, that's not a problem. How is it different? I think it's a little bit different because I can't remember what impact those other games had on those other teams' positions in the league. I do know that certainly the game, we only won the league a couple of times in my time. Before the end of the season, probably the 14-15 season would have been the only one that we won it before the end of the season. And the games that we rested people there were Cheshire and Leicester, and both those teams were already in the playoffs and already fixed in their position. so it made no difference at all. So that has an impact. But I suppose ultimately, I'm kind of banging the drum here for Surrey, for Manchester, for anybody else who might be fighting for that 8th spot at the end of the season, who are entitled to say, well, hang on, that's not a team, that's not the same group that we competed against. As I say, it's not straightforward.
It's not, and I suppose the argument is that then nobody's going to play the same London team through the course of the year, because they have a schedule to manage, and they have a thing, and I would expect that the teams, as you said earlier about Bristol was second in the table, still are second in the table, so you would expect them to be more up for that game and more have a stronger lineup for that game than you would for the team at the bottom of the table.
The fundamental question is what kind, and this is where we're moving away from the British way of things to the American way of things. And that's not to say it's right or it's wrong.
No.
Okay, it's where the difference between the league and the regular season comes in.
Yeah.
We're in a situation where we're dealing with, and 2 weeks ago I was twisting on about athletes having proper time for recovery as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not unsympathetic to the situation London is in. I'm not unsympathetic to the fact that they need to prepare themselves for Barcelona, and they need to be healthy for that. None of this is straightforward, and none of this is easy. But I'm also sympathetic to the integrity of the competitions. And we had half an hour of this last time against Caledonia when they played the team that they didn't want to win. And this time the coaches coached the game to win. The team he's put on the court hasn't, I don't think, got much of a hope in hell of winning, to be honest. Although at least the minutes that he's played them. If you play Oleseni and Morgan 30 minutes, then probably you do. But then again, you're not going to do that, because that would defeat the whole purpose of not playing the other guys. So it doesn't win. But I think what the league needs to do, for the clarity and for the Surrey fans, Manchester fans, and even I suppose Newcastle 3 and 7, or for everybody, is to come out and just say what is the rule. What clearance do they need to obtain in order to, in relation to kind of, as opposed to injury, as opposed, to rest? What clearance is it for rest? And ensure that, this is why, again, our league is backward in relation to injury reports. We don't do them. We talked about this last year.
Yeah.
I
suppose the other thing is, because obviously
you just get 5 minutes before the game, you get a tweet saying these guys aren't playing.
Yeah, the NBA has an issue, because the NBA's problem is away teams not playing their superstars.
Yeah, absolutely.
And therefore they brought in this new rule this year about what's the phrase I'm looking for? The Popovich phrase that I'm looking for.
Load
management. Sorry.
Yeah.
They brought in this new rule around that way. If you're an all-star or whatever, I can't remember the exact detail of it.
Yeah.
And it's that bizarre thing that is in American sport, that when I hear talking heads in America going on about, but Steph Curry doesn't play, this might be this one kid in Denver's chance to see Steph Curry, blah, blah, blah. And I go, wait a minute. When my team played Man City, when we were in that division, and Erling Haaland wasn't playing, we would go, woohoo, Erling Haaland's not playing, we might have a small chance now.
But it's a difference
we were hoping that, so it's a different mentality.
The difference between competition and entertainment, isn't it?
Well, but it's that thing of, I want my team to win, so why do I care that the other team isn't at full strength, sort of thing? So that's it. But I've sidetracked the.
No, you're right. It's because but there is a bigger picture, which is our kind of sliding, either deliberately, intentionally, or otherwise, towards the American way. But
the point I was going to say is, if there's a rule that the NBA writes up that says, Steph Curry has to play, he's got a back injury, he can't play.
Yeah. Well, in that case, you ask for the medical information to do that.
The doctor says he's got a back injury. He's told me he's got a back injury. How do you?
Well, the doctor would have to sign the note to say that.
He works for the club. Of course, he's going to sign that. And I go to my chiropractor and I say my back hurts. How does she know?
I've never believed, and this is probably me as a lawyer, I've never believed that there was a good reason for not imposing a rule was the fact that it could be contravened.
Yeah, no, but I agree with you on that. But my point is, it doesn't really matter what the rule is.
This is highbrow stuff, isn't it, Dan?
It doesn't really matter what the rule is. If they, and again, I go back to, I had a problem in the trophy because it was a knockout game. One game out of 36, where in my view, you know, having seen Plymouth against Sheffield 2 weeks ago,
yeah,
I would have said, well, you've got enough there to win that game. My view. You
well,
obviously
maybe,
come down on a different view that you didn't think they
maybe
did.
you have if you don't play your three best players 15 minutes each.
But again, it's that at what point do you decide, well, they were going to play 25, but there's no point now.
Exactly, which is why it's such an absolute such a bed of thorns to try and manage your way through. But what I think everybody's entitled to is some clarity. And I hope the league comes out and gives it some clarity, because if I was sorry, I'd be on the phone saying, you know, they're going to play the same team against us that they played against them. You know, it's, you know, there's no right answer.
No. So let's just rattle through the game quickly. Wiley into the starters again.
Wiley played great.
Yeah, Johnson outscoring, 19-11 lead. Hart then hit a couple of threes. Atwood as well, 34-17 early in the second quarter.
Yeah, they played really well. They moved the ball. They knocked down open shots. They, as I say, they benefited from the fact that, you know, London are not only playing guys who aren't necessarily at the level, but they're also playing guys who haven't played together. So it's a whole new group. They've got no cohesion at all. So they're not being given the best opportunity to prove that they are. They've got Queeley, who is basically a 3-man, possibly even a 4. He's playing the point guard half the time. You know, so it means that they are horrendously out of sync. The other thing is the message that it sends to Morgan and Matt Morgan in particular, and Grantham. Grantham came off the bench, that these other guys aren't playing, but you are. But that really kind of means that we're not really bothered about winning this game, which means they were never going to go and injure themselves or go out particularly hard in relation to. There was a couple of times in the second quarter, maybe when they were down 15, that Matt Morgan just went to the rim as if no one was there. One time he nailed the cameraman afterwards. And
caught the camera. That was incredible.
Caught the camera. It's very impressive. Yeah. But the different, you know, he just made a play. You know, he was just different level for those 2 or 3 players, but there was no intent in relation to him to do with to kind of pick his team up on his shoulders and carry them to a famous win. That just wasn't what they were there for. They were there to get out of there. And obviously the concrete floor plays something to do as well. But to be fair, you know, Plymouth still had to do what they had to do. You know, Levi, again, you know, battled away and got his tip-ins and did all the things he was meant to do. Wiley played like a man possessed. Faulkner eventually kind of picked up the slack and made a couple of threes at the end.
So just to pick up on that, Johnson with 5 points, and then Wiley 2 dunks and a 9-0 run out of the media timeout in the second quarter. So it's 48-24. London got it down to 14 at the end of the third, 15 with 5 minutes to go in the fourth, but then back-to-back threes from Faulkner, which were a bit out of the Jacob shot selection mold.
He has the ability to hold a pose, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. It was an 86-65 lead, and Lasker was going, hang on a minute, it might not happen on Twitter when I said Plymouth were going to win. But
5 minutes to go, Plymouth were up by 21, up by 18, and I put a tenner on them to win by more than 21 at 3-1. So I was happy with that, because he wasn't bringing his bench back in, and so I made 20 quid for that, 25 quid. Sorry, bet with Dave. Because they were just done, you know, and Plymouth were riding the wave, and they were, you know, PJ gets his 500th win, which we have to.
Gambleaware.co.uk. People.
Yeah,
I think we've said that. So Paul James 500 league wins, incredible. I mean, it's just a mad number, really. There's only 4 clubs, I think it is, that have got more than that. Clubs, not people. So and he's been waiting a few weeks for it, and they gave him they gave him the old drink bottle shower that's now de rigueur after any.
I mean, I don't think that's a little bit passé already. That
yeah,
not a fan. too much. I'm not a posturing person. You figured that yet?
Yeah.
Verbal posturing's fine. All this stuff is now.
London, what was I put a tweet out earlier and I can't remember. London have the fourth best winning streak now in the history of the league. Kingston 45, I think it was.
42, I think you said. 42 maybe.
And check Twitter, will have it right. Newcastle 28, Newcastle 23, then London 22, and Portsmouth 21, and Kingston had another 20 run, but there wasn't enough characters in the tweet to put that in. For
no, the first I think anything less than 23 is pretty irrelevant, to be honest. I always thought 23 games was just about the right marker for exceptionalism.
The fact that Kingston did twice that is
23.
Johnson 24 points.
Sorry,
8 of
28
11.
games. We didn't even win the Southern League that year.
I know.
That's scary. That is. From 28 in a row, didn't win first 18 league games, didn't win the league. I don't think you're going to say that about London this year.
No, I think they'll be okay. 8 and 11 for Johnson, 24 points, 8 4 11 even. Wiley 18 points and 8 rebounds. Hart 13 points, 28 points from turnovers. Plymouth. Caboza 21, just as 13 and 5. They were the only two in double figures. They had 22 turnovers, 42% field goals, and 5 for 26 from three.
The 22 turnovers and not having any shooters rather hurt them. Just lack of familiarity and different level of competition.
So I have the league table here. I've just pushed it away, but I'll run through it quickly. London Lions now 12 and 1, still top of the table. It's a bit of a melee after that, I think it's fair to say. Bristol 8 and 4, Cheshire 7 and 4, Caledonia 6 and 3, Leicester 6 and 4, Sheffield 6 and 5, and then Newcastle in 7th, 3 and 7, Manchester and Surrey both 2 and 8, and Plymouth now 2 and 10.
Yeah, it's working up quite well. We'll see. I mean, the whole table's a little bit of a mess at the minute because the schedule's been so unbalanced. Schedules are awful. And we're not doing until probably, I think, maybe 16 or 17 games will be a fairer balance.
Somebody else asked me for RPI this week. Was it Rose? Somebody asked me for RPI.
Yeah, well, it would be more.
If I remember by the time I've finished editing this, I'll put it out.
Well, I think it'd be more relevant than it's ever been, because obviously it's not that relevant if everybody's played each other once. It doesn't make much difference.
But the question is whether I use the all comps RPI or the league games only RPI.
It's amazing because that kept me awake for 2 hours last night. That very question.
They come out slightly differently because I use real time. I use real time home and away records.
Do you think we've finally traversed into the?
We have, Everybody's turned off now. Everybody's turned off. It's time to go. It's also gone 10 o'clock, so it is time.
Yes, and even the fireworks have stopped. God.
Yeah. So on that bombshell, I think I'm working next Sunday as well. So I'm just going to quickly look and check if I press the wrong thing on my phone. Yes, I am. I'm doing doubleheader next week, so it'll be back to Monday again.
That's slightly tricky, Dan.
Oh, right. Are you otherwise engaged?
But one of us turns 50 next Monday.
Oh, dude, there's one of us. I didn't realize.
And it's not you.
Monday the 13th of November, yeah.
Monday the 13th of November.
Oh, right. That is slightly awkward.
To this day, in Bensham Hospital, Gateshead.
Yeah.
Was born.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll don't worry, people. We'll think of something. I'm not quite sure what.
We'll find a way.
We'll think of something.
Yeah. I don't know what the plan is yet. So there may be no plan. I'm rather guessing there is no plan. So be told just get on with it. And here's your fish and chips.
Here's your fish and chips. Go record SMB.
Yeah, go record that. Go spend it with the people you like. That type of stuff. But I don't know. We'll sort it out.
Yeah.
By the way, all cards, private messages on Twitter for donation cards.
Yeah. All gratefully received. Right. On that blagging for a bit of love from the world outside, we'll park it for this week, and we'll be back at some point in the future. But for now, goodbye.
Bye, guys.